I was enjoying my morning coffee when my work phone buzzed with a call that would turn into the most satisfying day of my career. The dispatcher's voice crackled through the line, informing me that someone in the Meadowbrook Springs subdivision had reported a vicious dog running loose, terrorizing the neighborhood. I finished my coffee, grabbed my county animal control jacket, and headed out in my official vehicle, thinking this would be just another routine call. Little did I know that the person who had escalated this to the police was about to have the worst day of her life. My name is Kendrick, and I have been working as the county animal control officer for Riverside County, California, for the past 8 years. Before that, I spent 5 years as a veterinary technician and 2 years volunteering at local shelters. I know dogs, I know animal behavior, and most importantly, I know the law when it comes to pets and property. What I did not know when I woke up that Tuesday morning was that my own dog would be the subject of a hysterical complaint, or that the woman who called the cops would turn out to be the same HOA president who had been making my life miserable for the past 6 months. I had moved into Meadowbrook Springs about 7 months ago, attracted by the reasonable home prices and the promise of a quiet neighborhood. The subdivision sat on the eastern edge of Riverside, with neat rows of Spanish-style homes, well-maintained lawns, and street names that all referenced various bodies of water, despite being in the middle of a desert. My house on Clearwater Drive was a modest 3-bedroom with a decent backyard, perfect for me and my dog, a 3-year-old German Shepherd mix named Duke. Duke was the gentlest dog you could imagine. I had rescued him from a high-kill shelter 2 years ago when he was just over a year old, malnourished and terrified. With proper care, training, and lots of love, he had transformed into a loyal, well-behaved companion. He had his canine good citizen certification, had passed therapy dog training, and occasionally accompanied me to schools for educational presentations about responsible pet ownership. The idea that anyone could consider Duke vicious was laughable to anyone who actually knew him. The problems with the HOA had started almost immediately after I moved in. The Meadowbrook Springs Homeowners Association was run with an iron fist by a woman named Patricia Donovan, though everyone called her Patty. She was in her late 40s, with an asymmetrical blonde bob that she clearly thought was stylish but actually made her look like she was perpetually asking to speak to a manager. She wore too much makeup, favored leopard print, and had a voice that could strip paint off walls when she got worked up. My first encounter with Patty had been 3 days after moving in. I was unloading the last boxes from my truck when she came marching up my driveway, clipboard in hand, wearing white capri pants and a hot pink blouse. She introduced herself as the HOA president and immediately started listing violations. My grass was half an inch too long according to their standards. My garbage cans were visible from the street even though it was trash day. The small decorative rocks I had placed around my mailbox were not on the approved list of landscaping materials. Oh, and dogs over 50 pounds required special approval, which I had not obtained. I had tried to be polite. I explained that I had just moved in and was still getting settled. I showed her Duke's paperwork, including his vaccinations, his training certificates, and my professional credentials. I assured her that Duke was well trained and would not be a problem. She had looked down her nose at me, sniffed, and said that rules were rules. She expected me to submit the proper paperwork within a week, and she would be watching to ensure I maintained my property to HOA standards. Over the following months, Patty became my personal nightmare. She sent violation notices for the smallest infractions. My car was parked 6 inches too far into the driveway apron. My house number plaque was bronze instead of the required brass. I had left my trash cans out until 8 in the morning instead of bringing them in by 7. Each violation came with a fine, and each fine came with Patty's signature and a smiley face sticker, which somehow made it even more infuriating. But the real issue was Duke. Patty had developed an obsession with my dog. She claimed he barked constantly, though my neighbors on both sides assured me they rarely heard him. She said he was intimidating, though he had never shown aggression toward anyone. She filed complaint after complaint, each one more ridiculous than the last. She demanded I build a higher fence, even though my 6-foot fence exceeded code requirements. She insisted Duke was escaping and running around the neighborhood, even though he was either in my securely fenced yard or on a leash with me at all times. I had tried everything to appease her. I installed additional fence reinforcements. I kept meticulous records of Duke's activities. I even had my neighbors sign statements confirming that Duke was not a nuisance. Nothing satisfied Patty. She seemed determined to either get Duke removed from the neighborhood or force me to move out entirely. The situation came to a head 2 weeks before the phone call that morning. I had come home from work to find Patty in my backyard, having let herself through my side gate. She was taking pictures of Duke with her phone, and Duke, being the friendly dog he was sitting patiently near her, his tail wagging. When I asked her what the hell she thought she was doing on my property without permission, she had the audacity to claim she was documenting evidence of a dangerous animal. I told her to leave immediately, and that if she ever entered my property without permission again, I would file trespassing charges. She had left in a huff, shouting something about how I would regret threatening her. Now, driving toward the call about a vicious dog in Meadowbrook Springs, I felt a sense of dread settling in my stomach. The address the dispatcher had given me was on Riverstone Circle, which was just 2 streets over from my house. The description was vague: a large dog, possibly a German shepherd, running loose and acting aggressively. My heart started pounding. I had left Duke in my backyard that morning, securely contained as always. But what if something had happened? What if somehow he had gotten out? I arrived at the scene to find a Riverside Police Department cruiser already parked on the street. Officer Martinez, whom I knew from previous joint calls, was standing on the sidewalk talking to a very agitated Patty. The moment I saw her, everything clicked into place. Of course it was Patty. Of course she had called the cops, and I had a sinking feeling I knew exactly which dog she had reported. I parked my vehicle and approached with my professional demeanor firmly in place, even though internally I was seething. Officer Martinez looked relieved to see me. He was a decent guy, mid-30s, who actually cared about doing his job right rather than just writing tickets and collecting overtime. "Morning, Kevin," Martinez said. "We got a call about an aggressive dog. The caller says it has been running loose through the neighborhood for the past hour, jumping on people and acting threatening." Patty's eyes widened when she saw me step out of the county animal control vehicle. The recognition hit her like a physical blow, and her face went through a rapid series of expressions: surprise, confusion, and then anger. She had not made the connection that her neighbor Kevin was the same Kevin Kendrick who served as the county's animal control officer. To be fair, I had never mentioned my job to her during our previous encounters because, frankly, it was none of her business. "You," Patty said, pointing at me with a perfectly manicured finger. "You cannot handle this call. You live in this neighborhood. There is a conflict of interest." I kept my voice calm and professional. "Madam, I am the only animal control officer on duty for this district right now. I am here to investigate the complaint. If you have concerns about my professionalism, you can file a formal complaint with the county, but right now, I need to do my job. Can you describe the dog you reported? Patty's face was turning an interesting shade of red. It is a huge German shepherd, brown and black, with a vicious temperament. It came running at me while I was on my morning walk. It was completely out of control, no collar, no leash, no owner in sight. It is probably rabid. I pulled out my incident report tablet. Can you show me exactly where you encountered this dog? Patty gestured down the street. I was walking past the corner of Riverstone and Clearwater when it came charging out of nowhere. It nearly knocked me over. Did the dog make physical contact with you? I asked. Well, no, but it could have. It was jumping around, acting crazy. Did the dog bite you, snap at you, or display any overtly aggressive behavior such as growling, baring teeth, or showing a defensive posture? Patty crossed her arms. It was loose without a leash. That is illegal, and it is a dangerous breed. Officer Martinez interjected, Madam, there are no breed-specific laws in Riverside County, and I need to know if you were actually threatened or injured. I felt threatened, Patty insisted. That animal should be impounded immediately and its owner fined. Better yet, it should be put down before it hurts someone. That last comment made my blood boil, but I maintained my composure. Madam, I need to locate the dog first. Is it still in the area? I do not know, Patty said. After I called the police, I went back to my house. It could be anywhere by now, terrorizing other innocent people. I turned to Martinez. I am going to do a sweep of the area. Can you get a more detailed statement from her about the exact time and location? Martinez nodded, and I could see in his eyes that he was already skeptical of Patty's story. Cops deal with exaggerated reports all the time, and Martinez was experienced enough to spot the signs. I got back in my vehicle and slowly drove through the neighborhood, my eyes scanning yards, sidewalks, and common areas. I was looking for Duke, but I was also looking for any other dogs that might match the description. After 20 minutes of searching and finding nothing, I decided to check on my own house. I pulled up to my house on Clearwater Drive and immediately felt a wave of relief. Duke was in the backyard, visible through the gaps in the fence, lying in his favorite sunny spot, chewing on a rubber toy. He saw my vehicle and came trotting over to the fence, tail wagging, clearly wondering why I was home in the middle of my shift. The gate was still latched and locked. The fence showed no signs of damage or escape routes. Duke had been exactly where I left him all morning. I took out my phone and documented everything with photos and video, including time stamps. I checked the entire perimeter of my fence, photographing each section. I then went inside and checked my home security camera footage. I had installed cameras 6 months ago specifically because of Patty's harassment, and now I was grateful for the foresight. The footage clearly showed Duke in the backyard all morning. He had not escaped, had not left the property, and had spent most of his time napping in the sun or playing with his toys. The timestamps were clear and irrefutable. Whatever dog Patty had seen, it was not Duke. I saved the footage to my phone and my tablet, then headed back to where Martinez was still talking to Patty. 2 other neighborhood residents had joined them, apparently wanting to know what was going on. I recognized them as Bill and Susan Harper, a retired couple who lived 3 houses down from Patty. Officer, we should clarify something, Bill was saying as I walked up. We were outside gardening this morning and we did see a dog running loose, but it was not acting aggressive at all. It was just a young dog, looked like it was having fun exploring. Susan nodded. It ran right past us, very friendly. It stopped and let us pet it. It had a collar with tags and we could see it was well cared for. We were about to check the tags to call the owner when it ran off. Patty interjected. That is the dog I am talking about. It was out of control. Madam, I said, can you describe the dog's collar? Patty faltered. I did not see a collar. Susan spoke up. Oh, it definitely had a collar. It was blue with little white bones on it. I felt a surge of satisfaction. Duke's collar was solid black leather. What color would you say the dog was? Bill answered. Light brown, kind of golden. Definitely a German shepherd though, or mostly shepherd. Duke was dark brown and black, the classic shepherd coloring. This was clearly not my dog. And where did you last see this dog? I asked the Harpers. It was heading toward the east entrance of the subdivision, toward Magnolia Avenue, Bill said. That was probably 45 minutes ago. I thanked them and turned to Patty. Madam, based on the descriptions, the dog you reported is not the same dog these witnesses saw. Additionally, I have checked the area thoroughly, and I need more specific information to continue this investigation. Can you tell me what time exactly you saw this dog? Patty was flustered now. Around 7:30 this morning. And you called the police when? Around 9:15. Martinez looked up from his notes. Madam, why did you wait almost 2 hours to report a dangerous dog? I had things to do first. I had to get ready for my HOA board meeting. I made a note on my tablet. So the dog you saw, assuming it was the same dog the Harpers described, has been gone from the area for at least 2.5 hours. Without a current location or any evidence of actual aggression, there is not much more I can do right now. I will file a report about a stray dog sighting, and I will check with local residents to see if anyone is missing a dog matching that description. That is it. Patty's voice was rising. You are not going to search every yard. You are not going to impound it. Madam, I cannot impound a dog I cannot locate, and based on the witness statements, this dog was not acting aggressively. Running loose is a violation of leash laws, yes, and the owner will be cited if I locate them. But this is not an emergency situation. Patty's face was now fully red. I know what this is about. You live in this neighborhood. You probably know whose dog it is and you are protecting them. Martinez had clearly had enough. Madam, Officer Kendrick is a professional doing his job. If you have a complaint about his conduct, you need to file it through proper channels, but making accusations without evidence is not helpful. I want to file a complaint right now, Patty said, against him and against whoever owns that vicious dog. You can file a complaint about the animal control response with the county, I said, handing her a business card with the county office number. As for the dog, I will continue to investigate. If you see the dog again, call immediately with a location and I will respond. Patty snatched the card from my hand. You have not heard the last of this. I am the president of the Meadowbrook Springs HOA, and I will make sure the county knows how incompetent you are. She stormed off toward her house, which I now realized was the large corner lot property with the excessive lawn decorations and the bright pink front door. Of course, she lived in the most ostentatious house in the neighborhood. After she was gone, Martinez let out a long breath. Man, that lady is something else. You have no idea, I said. She has been harassing me since I moved in. She mentioned you live here. Is that going to be a problem? No, I said firmly. I've done everything by the book, and I think I know what is really going on here. I showed Martinez the security footage from my house, showing Duke safely contained all morning. I think she was hoping the dog she saw was mine. She has been trying to get my dog declared dangerous for months. Martinez whistled. That is messed up. You should document all of this, man. If she is making false reports to harass you, that could be a crime. Oh, I am documenting everything, I assured him. We wrapped up the call, and I spent the next few hours doing actual work, following up on the stray dog report. I checked with the Harpers and a few other neighbors, getting more detailed descriptions. I cross-referenced the description with recent lost dog reports and found a match. A family 4 blocks away had posted on social media about their 9-month-old German Shepherd mix named Bailey, who had escaped through a damaged section of fence that morning. The blue collar with white bones matched. The golden coloring matched. Everything matched. I contacted the family, confirmed Bailey had made it home safely about an hour after escaping, and issued them a warning citation for the leash law violation along with information about fence repair requirements. They were apologetic and promised to fix the fence immediately. Case closed, paperwork filed, everyone happy except probably Patty. I finished my shift and headed home, looking forward to relaxing with Duke. But as I pulled into my driveway, I saw a piece of paper stuck to my front door. It was an official notice from the Meadowbrook Springs HOA, signed by Patty Donovan, informing me that I was in violation of the pet policy and would be required to attend a special hearing before the HOA board in 3 days. The notice claimed that my dog had been reported running loose, and that this constituted a serious violation that could result in my being required to remove the dog from the property or face fines of up to $500 per day. I stood there reading this absolute nonsense, feeling my anger build. Patty had not just called the cops on a random dog. She had specifically tried to frame my dog, and when that had not worked, she was now using her position in the HOA to retaliate against me. This was beyond petty neighborhood drama. This was harassment, and it was about to stop. I took pictures of the notice and went inside to check on Duke. He greeted me with his usual enthusiasm, completely oblivious to the drama surrounding him. I fed him dinner, took him for a long walk around the neighborhood, and then spent the evening building my case. First, I compiled all the documentation I had regarding Duke. His adoption papers, veterinary records, training certifications, vaccination records, licensing with the county, and the security footage showing he had never left my property. Then I compiled everything related to Patty's harassment. Every violation notice she had sent me, copies of my responses, photographs showing I was in compliance with rules, statements from neighbors, and the documentation from that day's incident, including the police report and witness statements. But I also did something else. I started digging into the HOA itself. I requested copies of the HOA bylaws, the CC and Rs, and the meeting minutes for the past 2 years. As a homeowner in the subdivision, I had a right to access these documents. What I found was eye-opening. Patty had been elected HOA president 3 years ago, and since then, the association had become increasingly tyrannical. Fines had increased by 300%. The list of approved modifications and decorations had shrunk to almost nothing. And most interesting, the HOA bank account had some significant discrepancies. Money that should have been going toward neighborhood maintenance and improvements seemed to be disappearing. I was not an accountant, but I knew someone who was. My friend Rachel worked as a forensic accountant for a law firm that specialized in HOA disputes. I called her that evening and explained the situation. She was immediately interested, especially when I mentioned the financial irregularities I had noticed. "Kevin, if she is embezzling from the HOA, that is serious," Rachel said. "That is theft, fraud, potentially a felony depending on the amounts involved. Do you have access to the actual bank statements?" "Not yet, but as a homeowner I should be able to request them." "Do it. Request the last 3 years of bank statements, all invoices for work done, and all receipts for expenses. You have a legal right to see how your HOA dues are being spent. I sent an email that night to the HOA treasurer, a man named George Patterson, requesting the financial documents. I cited the specific sections of the California Civil Code that granted homeowners the right to inspect HOA records. I kept the email professional and did not mention Patty or my dispute with her. The next morning, I received a response from George. It was surprisingly friendly and said that he would be happy to provide the documents I requested. He asked if I could come by his house that evening to pick them up, as he kept copies of everything for his own records. His tone suggested he might have his own issues with how the HOA was being run. I spent my workday handling actual animal control calls, including helping rescue a cat stuck in a storm drain and investigating a complaint about a neglected horse on a rural property. Real work, helping real animals, doing the job I loved. It was a good reminder that most people were reasonable, and most situations could be resolved with patience and proper procedure. That evening, I visited George Patterson's house. He was in his mid-60s, a retired engineer with a precise manner and a no-nonsense attitude. He invited me into his home office, where he had several boxes of documents waiting. "I appreciate your interest in the HOA finances," George said. "To be honest, I have been concerned about some things for a while now, but I have not had the time or energy to pursue it. Since you are asking, though, I figure it is worth looking into." "What kind of concerns?" I asked. George pulled out a spreadsheet he had created. "Patty has signature authority on the HOA account, which is normal for a president. But she has been making withdrawals and payments that do not quite match up with the approved budget. For example, last year we approved $5,000 for repainting the entrance monument signs. According to the bank statements, $6,000 was withdrawn. The painter's invoice, however, was only for $4,000. Where did the other $2,000 go? He showed me several other examples. A landscaping company that had supposedly done work throughout the neighborhood but whose invoice did not match the amount withdrawn. A legal retainer for an HOA attorney that was 3 times the actual cost. Office supplies that cost more than a small business would spend in a year. I estimate at least $30,000 is unaccounted for over the past 2 years, George said. Maybe there are legitimate explanations. Maybe there are receipts I have not seen, but it looks bad. Have you confronted Patty about this? I tried about 6 months ago. She got very defensive and accused me of questioning her integrity. She said I could resign from the board if I did not trust her leadership. Since then, she has been making my life difficult. Violation notices, nasty emails, that sort of thing. She is good at that, I said. George smiled grimly. I heard about what happened yesterday with your dog. Word travels fast in this neighborhood. For what it is worth, I have seen your dog many times on walks, and he seems like a perfect gentleman. He is. This is pure harassment on her part. Well, if you are going to take her on, you should know what you are dealing with. Patty does not back down easily. She has driven 3 families out of this neighborhood in the past 2 years with her constant violations and harassment. People just get tired of fighting her and move. I am not moving, I said firmly, and I am not letting her continue to abuse her authority. George handed me a USB drive. Everything is on here. Bank statements, invoices, meeting minutes, correspondence. I have kept copies of everything. If you find something actionable, I will support you. This HOA is supposed to serve the homeowners, not the ego of one person. I thanked George and left with the documents. Over the next 2 days, I went through everything with Rachel's help. What we found was damning. Patty had systematically embezzled approximately $37,000 from the HOA over the past 2.5 years. She had used a variety of methods, inflating invoices and pocketing the difference, paying her personal credit card from the HOA account, writing checks to fake vendors, and simply making cash withdrawals with vague descriptions. Rachel put together a comprehensive report documenting the fraud. "This is enough for criminal charges," she said. "Embezzlement of this amount is a felony in California. You need to report this to the police." "I will," I said, "but first, I have an HOA hearing to attend." The hearing was scheduled for Thursday evening at 7 in the community center building at the neighborhood entrance. I arrived 15 minutes early with Duke, who I had decided to bring along. If they wanted to have a hearing about my dog, they could meet my dog. The community center was a small building with a meeting room, a kitchenette, and a bathroom. The HOA board consisted of Patty as president, George as treasurer, and 3 other members, Linda Martinez, Tom Williams, and Deborah Chen. Linda and Tom were Patty's cronies, middle-aged suburbanites who seemed to enjoy wielding what little authority they had. Deborah, I had heard, was reasonable but usually got outvoted. When I walked in with Duke, Patty's face went pale and then red. "That animal cannot be in here. This is a violation of health codes." "Actually," I said calmly, "service animals and emotional support animals are allowed in public buildings under the ADA, but Duke is neither, so you are right that I cannot claim that protection. However, this is a meeting specifically about my dog, and I have a right to present evidence in my defense. Part of that evidence is the dog himself. You can observe his behavior and temperament firsthand." Duke, as if on cue, sat down next to me and yawned. Several people in the room chuckled. There were about 15 other residents in attendance, apparently drawn by the neighborhood gossip about the dramatic dog incident. Patty banged a gavel on the table. "Fine. Let us get this started. We are here because Kevin Kendrick's dog was reported running loose through the neighborhood, acting aggressively, and violating multiple HOA covenants regarding pet ownership. I would like to address those accusations," I said. "You will speak when I tell you to speak," Patty snapped. George cleared his throat. "Patty, he has a right to defend himself. This is not a dictatorship." Patty glared at George but gestured for me to continue. I pulled out my tablet and connected it to the flat-screen TV in the room. "First, let me address the accusation that my dog was running loose. This is my home security footage from the morning in question." I played the video, showing Duke in my backyard the entire morning. The timestamps were clear. "As you can see, my dog never left my property. He was safely and legally confined to my fenced yard." "That does not prove anything," Patty said. "The dog that was reported looked exactly like your dog. According to the witness statements taken by the police, the dog in question was light golden brown, wearing a blue collar with white bones. My dog is dark brown and black, and his collar is solid black leather. Additionally, the stray dog that was reported has been identified as belonging to a family on Maple Street. The owners were cited, and the dog was returned safely." I pulled up the police report and the citation on the screen. Several board members leaned forward to read it. "Furthermore," I continued, "I have here Duke's training certifications, including his Canine Good Citizen certification, his therapy dog training completion, and letters from 3 separate trainers attesting to his temperament. I also have statements from 6 neighbors confirming that Duke has never shown aggression and is rarely even heard barking." I distributed copies of everything to the board members. Linda and Tom looked uncomfortable. Deborah was reading everything carefully. George was barely suppressing a smile. Patty was not backing down. "Even if it was not your dog this time, your dog is still a potential threat. Large dogs are dangerous. We have the right to regulate them. Under what authority? I asked. California law prohibits breed-specific legislation. The HOA covenants, which I have read thoroughly, state that pets must be kept under control and cannot be a nuisance. My dog meets both criteria. There is no weight limit specified in the covenants, and there is no provision allowing the board to ban specific breeds or sizes. I am the president of this board, and I determine what is a nuisance, Patty said, her voice rising. Actually, no, you do not, I said. The covenants clearly define what constitutes a nuisance. Excessive noise, waste not being cleaned up, animals showing aggression, or animals damaging property. None of those apply to Duke. You cannot arbitrarily decide you do not like my dog and use your position to force me to get rid of him. The room was silent. Several residents were nodding in agreement. Patty looked like she was about to explode. This hearing is over, Patty declared. The board will deliberate and issue our decision within a week. Actually, I am not done, I said. I have some concerns about the HOA that I would like to address while everyone is here. Your time is up, Patty said. George spoke up. Patty, any homeowner has the right to address the board during meetings. That is in our bylaws. Patty reluctantly sat back down, her arms crossed tightly across her chest. I took a breath. This was it. I have been reviewing the HOA financial records, which as a homeowner I have a legal right to access. I have found significant discrepancies between the approved budgets, the actual bank withdrawals, and the invoices from vendors. The room suddenly got very quiet. Linda and Tom exchanged glances. Deborah sat up straighter. George was watching Patty carefully. For example, I continued, displaying a spreadsheet on the screen. Last year, the board approved $5,000 for painting the entrance signs. $6,000 was withdrawn from the account. The painter's invoice was for $4,000. Where did the other $2,000 go? Patty stood up abruptly. This is not the time or place for this discussion. If you have questions about finances, you can schedule a meeting with the treasurer. I did. George provided me with all the documents I requested, and what I found was a pattern of misappropriation of funds totaling approximately $37,000 over the past 2.5 years. The room erupted. Residents started talking over each other, asking questions, demanding answers. Patty was shouting that I was making false accusations and that she would sue me for slander. George was trying to call for order. Linda and Tom looked like they wanted to disappear. I raised my voice to be heard. I have documented everything and had it reviewed by a forensic accountant. The report has been submitted to the Riverside Police Department. This is now a criminal matter. That shut everyone up. Patty went completely white. You cannot do that, she stammered. You have no right. I have every right, I said. Embezzlement is a crime. Fraud is a crime. And using your position as HOA president to harass and retaliate against a homeowner who might expose your crimes is also illegal. Deborah spoke up for the first time. Patty, is this true? Have you been stealing from the HOA? Of course not. This is ridiculous. He is making this up because he is angry about the dog hearing. I have bank statements, I said. I have invoices. I have a paper trail that clearly shows money being diverted. The police will investigate, and if there are legitimate explanations, they will find them. But based on what I have seen, I do not think there are. George stood up. I move that we immediately suspend Patty's access to the HOA bank accounts pending the investigation. I second that, Deborah said immediately. All in favor? George asked. 3 hands went up, George, Deborah, and surprisingly Tom. Linda abstained. The motion passed. Patty was shaking with rage. You will all regret this. I will sue every single one of you. I will make your lives hell. "You have already been doing that," George said quietly. "I think we are ready for a change." Patty grabbed her purse and stormed out of the community center, slamming the door behind her. The meeting dissolved into chaos after that, with residents demanding answers and the remaining board members trying to figure out what to do next. I left with Duke, feeling both satisfied and drained. I had not planned to expose Patty's embezzlement at the hearing, but her refusal to back down about Duke had pushed me to it. Now the wheels were in motion, and there was no going back. The next few weeks were intense. The police investigation moved quickly once they reviewed the evidence Rachel and I had compiled. They obtained the HOA bank records directly from the bank and conducted interviews with vendors. Several of the companies Patty had claimed to pay confirmed they had either never worked for the HOA or had been paid less than what the bank records showed. Patty hired a lawyer and refused to speak to the police without counsel present. She maintained her innocence, claiming that any discrepancies were accounting errors or misunderstandings. But the evidence was overwhelming. The HOA held an emergency meeting and voted to remove Patty as president. George was appointed interim president, and the board hired an actual attorney to sort out the legal mess and attempt to recover the stolen funds. Meanwhile, the harassment stopped. No more violation notices appeared on my door. No more complaints about Duke. I could finally enjoy my home and my dog in peace. About 6 weeks after that dramatic board meeting, I received notification that Patty had been formally charged with felony embezzlement and fraud. The total amount she had stolen was confirmed to be just over $41,000 once investigators found additional hidden transactions. If convicted, she faced up to 3 years in prison and would be required to pay full restitution. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for a Tuesday morning. I took the day off work to attend, wanting to see this through to the end. The courtroom was small, and there were only a handful of people in attendance. Me, George, Deborah, a few other neighborhood residents, and Patty's family members. Patty looked different. She had toned down the makeup and was wearing a conservative navy suit. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. She looked tired and scared, nothing like the imperious HOA president who had made so many lives miserable. The prosecutor presented the evidence efficiently. The paper trail was clear and damning. Patty's attorney tried to argue that she had made mistakes, but had not intended to steal, that she had been overwhelmed by the responsibilities of being HOA president, and had gotten confused about which expenses were personal and which were HOA related. The judge was not buying it. The pattern was too consistent, the amounts too large, and the attempts to hide the transactions too deliberate. The judge ordered Patty to stand trial and set bail at $50,000. As we left the courtroom, Patty's husband approached George and me. He was a quiet man who I had seen around the neighborhood but never really talked to. He looked devastated. "I did not know," he said. "I swear I had no idea she was doing this. When the police came, I thought it was a mistake. But once I saw the evidence, I am so sorry." "I know that does not make it right, but I am sorry," George nodded. "It is not your fault, but she needs to be held accountable." "I know," he said quietly. "We are going to lose our house. We are using it as collateral for her bail and legal fees. And even if we manage to keep it, I do not think we can stay in that neighborhood after this." There was nothing to say to that. Patty had destroyed not just the HOA's finances but her own family's life. The trial took place 3 months later. It was a short trial because the evidence was so clear. Patty's attorney negotiated a plea deal. She pleaded no contest to felony embezzlement and agreed to pay full restitution. In exchange, The prosecutor recommended a sentence of 18 months in county jail followed by probation, rather than 3 years in state prison. The judge accepted the plea but added some conditions. Patty would be required to perform 300 hours of community service after her release. She would be banned from serving on any HOA board or similar organization for 10 years, and she would have to attend financial management counseling. On the day of sentencing, the judge asked if anyone wanted to make a victim impact statement. George stood up and spoke on behalf of the HOA and the homeowners. He talked about the stress and anxiety Patty's leadership had caused, the families who had moved away to escape her harassment, and the betrayal everyone felt when they learned she had been stealing from them. I chose not to speak. I had already said what I needed to say. But I watched as Patty was led away to begin her sentence, and I felt a complex mix of emotions: satisfaction that justice had been done, sadness that it had come to this, and relief that this chapter was finally over. The HOA underwent major reforms after Patty's removal. George served as president for a year and oversaw changes to the bylaws that limited the president's authority, required financial audits, and made it much harder for any one person to abuse their position. The neighborhood became a much friendlier place. Violation notices became rare and were issued only for legitimate problems. The excessive fines were rolled back. People started actually enjoying living there again. Duke, of course, remained the perfect dog he had always been. He never knew he had been at the center of such drama. He continued to accompany me on community education events, earned his advanced therapy dog certification, and became something of a neighborhood celebrity. Kids would stop to pet him when we went on walks, and he graciously accepted all attention with his usual gentle patience. One Saturday afternoon, about a year after everything had gone down, I was working in my front yard, doing some landscaping that I wanted to do, not because I was being forced to comply with some arbitrary HOA rule. Duke was lying in the grass nearby, watching the neighborhood activity with relaxed contentment. A car pulled up and George got out. He had a small wrapped package in his hand. "Hey Kevin, got a minute?" he called. "Sure, what is up?" George walked over and handed me the package. "This is from the HOA board. We wanted to thank you for everything you did. We probably should have done this months ago, but we have been busy trying to fix the mess Patty left behind." I unwrapped the package. Inside was a plaque that read, "In appreciation to Kevin Kendrick and Duke for their service to the Meadowbrook Springs community. Your courage in standing up for what is right has made this neighborhood a better place for everyone." I was genuinely touched. "You did not have to do this." "Yes, we did," George said. "You stood up when no one else would. You could have just moved away like the others did, but you stayed and fought. That matters." We chatted for a while about neighborhood stuff and then George left. I took the plaque inside and hung it in my home office, right next to Duke's training certificates and my county animal control commendations. That evening, I took Duke for a long walk through the neighborhood as the sun was setting. We passed the community center where the dramatic board meeting had taken place. We walked past Patty's old house, which now had a "for sale" sign in the yard. We walked past George's house, the Harper's house, and all the other homes in this subdivision that had become a real community again. Duke trotted along beside me, occasionally stopping to sniff something interesting or to accept pets from a passing neighbor. He did not need a plaque or recognition. He was just happy to be with me, doing what dogs do best, being a loyal companion. As for me, I had learned some valuable lessons through this whole ordeal. I had learned that standing up to bullies is hard but necessary. I had learned that abuse of power, no matter how small the domain, causes real harm to real people. I had learned that documentation and evidence are powerful tools for fighting injustice. And I had learned that most people are decent and will support what is right when given the chance. The irony of the whole situation was not lost on me. Patty had called the cops on what she hoped was my dog, thinking she could use it as another weapon in her campaign of harassment. She had not known that I was the animal control officer, that I would respond to the call, and that I would handle it professionally despite our history. But more than that, she had not realized that by pushing me one time too many, she would trigger the investigation that would end her reign of terror and expose her crimes. If she had just left me and Duke alone, if she had not been so obsessed with finding violations and exerting control, she might have gotten away with the embezzlement for years. But her need to dominate and punish backfired spectacularly. 6 months after the sentencing, I received a letter in the mail. It was from Patty, postmarked from the county jail. I almost threw it away without reading it, but curiosity got the better of me. The letter was short and written in neat handwriting. It said, "Kevin, I am writing this because my therapist says I need to take accountability for my actions. I was wrong to harass you and Duke. I was wrong to abuse my position as HOA president, and I was wrong to steal from the homeowners. I do not expect you to forgive me, and I am not asking for your sympathy. I just wanted you to know that I understand what I did, and I am trying to become a better person. I hope Duke is doing well. Despite everything, I could see he was a good dog. I was just too proud and too angry to admit it. Patty." I read the letter twice, trying to determine if it was sincere or just something her lawyer had told her to write to look good for the parole board. In the end, I decided it did not matter. Whether she was truly sorry or not, the consequences of her actions would follow her for years. And that was justice enough. I filed the letter away with all the other documents from that crazy period of my life. Then I called Duke, grabbed his leash, and headed out for our evening walk. Life was good. The neighborhood was peaceful. And my dog, the supposedly vicious animal who had started this whole chain of events, was exactly where he should be. By my side, tail wagging, ready for whatever adventures lay ahead. As we walked through the subdivision that evening, I reflected on how differently things had turned out than anyone could have predicted. A routine animal control call had become a fight against HOA tyranny and had exposed a significant crime. My professional life and personal life had collided in the most unexpected way, and through it all, Duke had been the constant, loyal, gentle, and completely innocent of the drama swirling around him. The Meadowbrook Springs subdivision continued to thrive under new leadership. Property values actually increased once word got out that the tyrannical HOA president was gone, and the association was being run reasonably. New families moved in, attracted by the community feel and the reformed governance. The neighborhood became known as one of the friendlier HOAs in Riverside County, which was saying something. As for my career, the whole situation had actually boosted my reputation in the county. My professionalism in handling a call that involved my own neighborhood, and my thoroughness in documenting everything, was noted by my supervisors. I received a commendation for exemplary service and was asked to speak at a county training about maintaining objectivity in difficult situations. The story of the HOA president who called the cops on the animal control officer's dog became something of a legend in local government circles. It was told as a cautionary tale about the importance of knowing your neighbors and not making assumptions. It was also told as an example of how corruption can hide in unexpected places and how ordinary citizens can make a difference by standing up for what is right. Duke, for his part, continued to be an ambassador for responsible dog ownership. We did more school visits, community events, and therapy dog work. He helped countless people overcome their fear of dogs, brought comfort to nursing home residents, and showed kids how wonderful a well-trained, well-loved dog could be. Every time someone met Duke, they were meeting the dog that a HOA president had called vicious and dangerous. The contrast between the reputation Patty had tried to give him and the reality of his gentle nature made an impact on everyone who heard the story. I eventually started dating someone I met through one of Duke's therapy dog visits. Her name was Karen Douglas, and she worked as a social worker at the hospital where we did pet therapy. She loved Duke immediately, which was a good sign, and she thought the whole HOA drama was both hilarious and impressive. "You took down a corrupt HOA president because she called the cops on your dog," she said one evening over dinner. "That is the most satisfying story I have ever heard." "I did not plan it that way," I said, laughing. "I was just trying to defend my dog." "That is what makes it perfect," Karen said. "You were not looking for a fight. You just stood your ground when someone tried to push you around. That takes character." Karen moved into my house about a year later, and Duke welcomed her with typical enthusiasm. The HOA board approved the change in occupancy without a single problem, because that was how things worked now. George had stepped down as president after his one-year term, and Deborah had taken over. She ran things efficiently and fairly, exactly how an HOA should be run. Patty was released from jail after serving 14 months of her 18-month sentence, getting 4 months off for good behavior. I heard through the neighborhood grapevine that she and her husband had divorced, that she had moved to another city, and that she was working a retail job while paying off the restitution she owed. Her life had completely unraveled as a consequence of her actions. I felt a twinge of sympathy when I heard that, but I also remembered all the families she had harassed, all the stress she had caused, and all the money she had stolen. Her punishment fit her crimes, and the fact that she was facing the consequences was important not just for justice, but for deterrence. Other HOA board members in other neighborhoods would hear this story and hopefully think twice before abusing their authority or dipping into funds that were not theirs. 3 years after the initial incident, the HOA held a neighborhood block party to celebrate the community and how far it had come. There were bounce houses for the kids, a barbecue, and various games and activities. Duke and I attended, of course, and Duke was mobbed by children wanting to pet him and adults wanting to thank me again for what I had done. George gave a short speech about the importance of community and accountability. He mentioned, without naming names, how the neighborhood had gone through a difficult period, but had emerged stronger. He thanked everyone who had supported the reforms and worked to make Meadowbrook Springs a place people were proud to live. As the sun set and the party wound down, I sat in a lawn chair with Karen beside me and Duke at my feet. Kids were running around with glow sticks, neighbors were chatting and laughing, and music played softly from speakers someone had set up. It was exactly what a neighborhood should be, people coming together, supporting each other, and enjoying the simple pleasure of community. "This is nice," Karen said, resting her head on my shoulder. "Yeah, it really is," I agreed. Duke yawned and settled into a more comfortable position, his eyes half closed as he relaxed in the warm evening air. He had no idea that he had been the catalyst for such significant change. To him, this was just another pleasant evening with his people and his neighborhood. But I knew, and I would never forget, sometimes the smallest things trigger the biggest changes. A dog running loose in the neighborhood, an HOA president making one call too many. An animal control officer who happened to be in the right place at the right time with the right skills and the right determination to see justice done. The story of Patty and Duke became a part of Meadowbrook Springs history. New residents would hear about it when they moved in, usually told with a mixture of amusement and disbelief. The community center had a new set of bylaws posted prominently on the wall, reforms that came directly from the lessons learned during that tumultuous period. And every time someone complained about their HOA being too strict, someone else in the neighborhood would mention what happened when our HOA went too far, and how the community came together to fix it. Years later, I would still occasionally get calls from other counties or municipalities asking me to speak about the importance of documentation, professional conduct, and standing up to corruption. The story had spread beyond Riverside County, becoming an example in training programs for animal control officers, HOA management seminars, and even forensic accounting classes. Each time I told the story, I would show pictures of Duke, gentle and patient as ever. I would explain how a simple false report about a dog running loose had led to uncovering tens of thousands of dollars in embezzlement. I would talk about the importance of knowing your rights, documenting everything, and not being intimidated by people in positions of authority. And at the end of every presentation, someone would inevitably ask the same question. Do you think Patty would have gotten away with it if she had not targeted your dog? My answer was always the same. Probably. She had been stealing for years before I moved in, and no one had caught on. But by focusing her harassment on me, she gave me a reason to look deeper into the HOA operations. Sometimes criminals get caught not because investigators are brilliant, but because the criminals make mistakes. Patty's mistake was not knowing who she was messing with, and not being able to control her need to dominate and punish. Duke lived a long, healthy life, reaching the age of 14 before health issues started to slow him down. He spent his final years as the beloved elder statesman of Meadowbrook Springs, still going on gentle walks, still greeting neighbors with a wagging tail, still exemplifying everything good about dogs and responsible pet ownership. When Duke finally passed peacefully in his sleep, the neighborhood held a memorial for him. Dozens of people came to share stories about how Duke had impacted their lives. Kids talked about how he had been the first dog they were not afraid of. Elderly residents talked about his therapy dog visits brightening their days. And everyone acknowledged that Duke had been the unlikely hero whose mere existence had triggered the downfall of a tyrant and the reformation of a community. The HOA board planted a tree in Duke's memory at the neighborhood entrance with a small plaque that read, "In memory of Duke, a good dog and a good friend, he made our community better simply by being himself." I adopted another dog eventually, a rescue named Max who had his own story and his own personality. Max was wonderful in his own way, but he could never replace Duke. No dog could. Duke had been special not just because of his temperament and training, but because of the role he had inadvertently played in one of the most significant events in our neighborhood's history. Looking back on everything that happened, I am struck by how interconnected events can be. If I had not become an animal control officer, I would not have responded to that call. If Patty had not been embezzling, I would not have found evidence when I started digging into HOA records. If Duke had not been such a perfect, well-behaved dog, I would not have had the moral authority to stand up to Patty's accusations. If George had not been a meticulous treasurer who kept copies of everything, I would not have had the documents I needed. If the other dog had not escaped that morning, giving Patty something to report, the whole chain of events might never have started. Life is full of these moments where small decisions and random chance combine to create something significant. The key is being prepared when those moments arrive. I was prepared because I did my job well. I documented everything. I knew the laws and regulations, and I was not willing to be pushed around by a bully. The story of how an HOA president called the cops on my dog, not knowing I was the county animal control officer who would respond, became more than just a personal victory. It became a reminder that authority must be exercised responsibly, that corruption thrives in darkness but withers in light, and that sometimes the most unlikely events can trigger necessary change. And at the heart of it all was Duke, a rescue dog who had overcome his own difficult past to become a certified good citizen, a therapy dog and a catalyst for justice. He never knew he was a hero. He just knew he was loved, he was safe, and he had a job to do. In the end, is not that what we all want? To be valued for who we are, to have a purpose, and to make a positive difference in the lives of those around us. Duke did all that and more. And while Patty spent 14 months in jail paying for her crimes, Duke spent every day of his life doing what dogs do best: loving unconditionally, living honestly, and reminding humans that sometimes the simplest approach is the best one. Do not lie, do not steal, do not abuse your power, and do not pick fights with people whose dogs are more well-behaved than you are. Those are good rules for everyone, HOA president or not.